We are, by my count, Trevor Sikkema, I believe, as Trevor joins us from PFF, 70 days away from night number 1 of the draft. My math right? Are you counting at home?
I should know that. That should, as lead draft analyst for PFF, that should actually be something that I should know. But
let me do this.
I'm gonna have to trust you on it. It's a lot of days between now and then. Working as so many other people are working hard on PFF's draft guide that we're putting out, first edition of it in a couple of weeks. So time is a strange concept to us right now as we are in the full swing of draft season.
It's 71 days if you include the 25th.
Okay.
For those scoring at home.
You were close. That was close. That was good on you.
We had to do this at the Senior Bowl in the Open a couple of weeks ago. I'm just trying to count backwards from Mobile, where we learned a lot about Michael Penix. We'll get to him in a second. Anyway, Trevor, the PFF mock draft is up on PFF.com. As I said before, it is guaranteed to be accurate or your money back. You do have Caleb Williams going number 1, and you also have him going to the Bears. I think we all agree, whomever has number 1, and if I'm the Bears, I don't trade out, it is going to be Caleb Williams, right?
Yeah, that's what I think. And I really do feel as though the Bears are going to be that team in the end. When we get to this point in the offseason, you mentioned the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl as well, the Combine coming up. It's a really good time of the year to learn a lot about what NFL circles might be thinking and what they are projecting for a lot of these teams. I can't find anybody, despite all the debates on social media between fans and media members and all of that, I can't really find anybody who tangibly is giving me a reason that the Bears would stick with Justin Fields. It just does not feel as though that would be the smart play or the play that is actually going to happen. In fact, I hear most of the opposite. So ultimately, I look at Chicago, and they are the team that traded out of the number 1 pick last year, and I think they are certainly happy with that. The haul they were able to get back, giving Justin Fields another year, was, at the time, understandable. But I think they look at what happened with C.J. Stroud this past year, what he has done for the Houston Texans, not alone, but a big part of it. And I don't think they can dare pass on that again for their current situation. And so that's why I think they're going to take a swing at the bat, and it is going to be Caleb Williams.
And then your mock draft, Trevor, really gets fun. You got Drake May going too. Big deal. A lot of people do. But you have Drake May going to the Denver Broncos. In return, the Commanders move down to 12. Again, this is all the world of make-believe. You get a first-round pick in 25, a second-round pick in 25, and a first-round pick in 26. So you move down to 12, pick up 2 1s and a 2. That's pricey.
It is pricey, but that is the cost of doing business for going up to get a guy that you think is potentially going to change your franchise. And this draft season is going to be very, very interesting because there are so many teams that need quarterbacks desperately, more desperately than that feels like has been the case in years past. There's not a lot of quarterbacks in free agency to supplement that. I mean, when you look at the free agent market, it's basically Baker Mayfield, who I don't think is getting out of Tampa, and Kirk Cousins. And I'm not sure where Kirk Cousins is going to go, but he's just one man, right? You've got teams like the Las Vegas Raiders, like the Denver Broncos, like the Minnesota Vikings, that are all sitting outside of the top 10, who would want to go up into the top 3 to go get one of these quarterbacks. And that's not even including teams like the Giants at 6 and the Atlanta Falcons at number 8. You could throw them into the mix as well. So I feel as though Washington, with a new ownership group, a lot of flexibility there, a lot of time, new regime, I think that they are going to entertain this offer. They certainly need a quarterback as well, and I have them kind of trading up and still getting J.J. McCarthy in this mock draft. But I think they are going to entertain this trade down effect where I'm not so sure that New England's going to be as willing to move out of number 3. They're going to want one of those quarterbacks again. They cannot go into the season with Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi as their guy. And so for Washington, I look at a team like Denver, who they made a bold statement this year with how they handled Russell Wilson in that situation in the middle of the season. It felt like it was free agency in October or November where they went, yep, we're basically cutting you, and we got games left to play. They weren't even eliminated from playoff contention. They were right in the mix. And they end up basically saying but not saying, yeah, we're moving on from Russell Wilson. And so I'm not sure that's a situation where you can afford to stay status quo either. And in fact, whenever that's the case, it's just going to cost you more, especially when it comes to a quarterback, to change that landscape for a guy who is worth it. And so Denver, one of many teams that I think will be calling Washington at number 2 and New England at number 3 to try to get in that conversation with the top 3 signal callers.
I'm talking to Trevor Sikkema here from PFF, lead draft analyst. They have their mock up right now on PFF.com. And again, they have the Broncos moving up to 2, trading with the Commanders and going up to get Drake May. Now, Trevor, before you came on, I threw out, I don't know, an idea that I have here for the Bears, because, and I've tried to tell people in Chicago this, the Caleb versus Fields thing doesn't have to be a binary decision. You could trade Justin Fields, get whatever you can get, a 2, maybe it's more like a 3 that could go to a 2 and a 5, something like that, right? And you can also trade number 1. If you are comfortable with Drake May or Jaden Daniels, you could potentially get a bounty, although not the same as 12-2 maybe, but you could get something if you traded from 1 down to 2, where Cliff Kingsbury sits now with the Commanders, or from 1 down to 3, where Elliott Wolf seemingly is now in charge in New England. What do you think of that idea? If again, you're okay with one of the other 2.
Yeah. No, I think that is a scenario that could certainly play out. Now, I'm not so sure it's going to be that close on teams' boards. And I think for this conversation to make sense, they all have to be right there. And if Chicago does, like you said, if they feel like they can win a Super Bowl, right? Because that's what we're going for here. If you think you can win a Super Bowl with any of these 3 quarterbacks, if you believe it is truly a coin flip of who you would rather have, then of course, I think that you would entertain this a little bit. The NFL draft is first and foremost about getting good football players, but it's also a little bit of a game, right? It's trading, it's wheeling and dealing, it's moving up and down, it's getting value exactly where you can to maximize future picks and moving up and having flexibility. So I think this is a conversation that is worth having. I don't think it's likely that it manifests itself when Ryan Poles and his scouting department are finished with their rankings, that they would truly be that close with all 3 of these guys. But if they are, it makes sense. I mean, you can expand this theory that you have here to the Arizona Cardinals, right? You look at the Cardinals at number 4. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think a lot of people talk about him as the consensus wide receiver 1, but I think it'll be pretty close between him and Malik Neighbors from LSU, Rome Odunze from Washington. Mm-hmm. Does Arizona get in a spot where even if all 3 are on the board, even if Marvin Harrison's on the board, they say to themselves, we can move back. We can get more picks. We can be comfortable with that. Monty Ossenfort, very clearly in his first year as general manager last year, was comfortable moving from 3 to 12 and then 12 back up to 6 to get the player they were probably going to pick at number 3, and they get an extra first-round pick out of it. So that's a fun part of this game. The Jets could maybe be a similar team. Jets are sitting there at number 10. Maybe when they get to the board, Joe Alt might be off the board, but let's say Talise Fuaga, Olufashanu, J.C. Latham, maybe they're still all on the board, and the Jets go, wow, maybe we can move back a little bit. We'd be comfortable with any of these guys. And so your theory is definitely something that's in play. Maybe not as much for Chicago at number 1, but could be for a lot of these other teams, because this draft class is so good at a lot of the premium positions.
And for those who don't know, those last 3 names that Trevor just mentioned, they're all offensive tackles. If you have not yet started to wrap your brain around the big board yet, which is available on PFF.com right now, I think it gets interesting just from where I sit, Trevor. The J.J. McCarthy question, because he is going to be the quarterback that you guys have him at 10 to the Commanders after a move. He is going to be the quarterback that climbs up. All right. There's always that late riser. I mean, call it whatever you want, right? Like the media catching up with the scouting community, however you want to phrase it. I think it gets interesting if, let's say, the Giants get to 6 and go, yeah, you know what? Maybe we take J.J. McCarthy. I know we just paid our guy, but you guys know that I think they're probably regretting that as much as I like Daniel Jones. Is J.J. McCarthy the quarterback that after the initial 3, everyone's going to try to move up for?
I think the 2024 NFL draft revolves around J.J. McCarthy. I think that he is the biggest wild card in this class because of what we talked about earlier. There are so many teams that need a quarterback that are not going to be able to supplement those needs the way you maybe want to in free agency.
And you have him ahead of Penix, right?
Yes, yeah, I have him ahead of Penix. I feel like the NFL is going to be a lot lower on Penix than the media is. I feel as though Penix is most likely going to be a day 2 pick, probably somewhere in the second round is where I would see him going.
You have him ahead of Bo Nix.
McCarthy, you're saying?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So Nix is somebody who we've got to figure out more information on and how the league sees him, because he is fascinating of a player. You watch him at Auburn, and this is not an NFL draft caliber quarterback. And I get it that he was younger, but you see him against SEC level competition and you go, he just was not able to play. I was not able to read the field correctly, did not have a good feel for pressure, did not make the right decisions. He goes over to Oregon, and he could use the excuse about Oregon's offense and, how the competition level is not as strong as it was in the SEC, but this is a different dude. I mean, he takes care of the football extremely well. He plays under pressure much better than he did at Auburn. And you want to say, all right, he doesn't have a volume of passes when it comes to the deep passing game, but he's got the arm to do it. It's not like it's not within his wheelhouse. It's all right there. He just wasn't asked to do it a ton. And for some instances when he was, some really pretty passes there. So he's got the added mobility. He can give you that RPO threat. The play action threat is always there as well. He's a guy who could play in a spread system. And so Nix to me is a little bit more of a wild card. And I think the league is going to be higher on McCarthy, because McCarthy coming out just a true junior, one of the youngest prospects in the class, coming from that heralded Michigan program, very successful quarterback over the last couple of years, a reigning national champion, obviously. Nix, much older of a prospect. And look, I think age for quarterbacks is kind of blown out of proportion anyways. They go like, oh, he's 25. Who cares? Look at how many quarterbacks are starting in the NFL playing at a top 10 level. They're mid-30s, late 30s. You don't even have to bring Tom Brady and what he was able to do into it. You've got plenty of quarterbacks who are playing well into their 30s.
And McCarthy's only 20.
And McCarthy's only 20. So I think the NFL likes that part of it. They like the moldable part of like, oh man, there's just so much better that he can be. There's so much further up he can go. So I ultimately do think that he is going to be drafted ahead of Nix. But like I said, I think he's the ultimate wild card, because does he go 6? Do the Chargers trade out of 5 and get a team to trade up there for McCarthy? Does he go all the way back at number 11? Because where that next quarterback goes off the board, then all of a sudden the teams that didn't get the quarterbacks, they become less desperate, right? They're not making calls every single pick trying to get up all that. It's not as chaotic. But as long as J.J. McCarthy is on the board and not picked by a team, I think it's going to be chaotic. I think the phones are going to be ringing off the hook for whatever team is picking in that top 5, top 10 area.
And for the record, you guys have Bo Nix going 30 to the Vikings here in your PFF mock draft up online right now. And that's a trade potentially with the Ravens. Vikings getting into 30 to take Bo Nix, who last year set an NCAA single season record for completion percentage at 77.4. 77.4, which I'm told is good, because it's a single season record. I want to go back to the age thing here real quick without going through every single pick here in your mock, which is interesting here, certainly with the corners and all the offensive linemen. Quinyon Mitchell, 20 to the Steelers. You're going to love him as potentially they get Joey Porter Jr. and Quinyon Mitchell there, because he was great in Mobile. But to my point, Mobile, the Senior Bowl, really lived up to the name this year, not through Jim Nagy's fault, because everybody was old. And this is a really different draft class, Trevor, because, and some would say it's not a good draft class after the first 3 rounds, because of the fact that everyone had a 6th year, not everyone, but with COVID, there are a lot of 6-year guys in this draft. There are a lot of players who would have gone in last year's draft but came back for the money, the NIL money. Take a kid like Sione Vaki, the safety from Utah, who also doubles as a third down back. Like, that's wild. He went on a 2-year Mormon mission, but is a true sophomore and is one of the younger players at the Senior Bowl. I mean, it used to be you go on your 2-year mission, you're one of the old men. He was one of the younger guys at the Senior Bowl because, Trevor, we have so many 6-year guys in this draft.
The COVID year of eligibility, it's throwing everybody for a loop. In December, you can't keep track of, oh, this guy's coming back for sure. He doesn't have any eligibility left. Then all of a sudden, the draft declaration day comes and goes, and you go, wait a second, he came back? And I felt like that's what we were doing in the middle of January. Look, there's a player at Miami who I think it's on his 9th year of college football because of injuries and the COVID year and all that. And so
it's a career.
Absolutely wild. It is. Yeah, it is. It is. It's the Tommy Boy line of, a lot of people go to school for 7 years. They're called doctors. And then you're adding another 2, so then you're getting even further into it. So you thought the Tommy Boy line was crazy and we're adding 2 more years to it.
All my friends went to Arizona State. I'm kidding.
I kid. They're trying to milk it a little bit, So look, it obviously, the age thing is going into this draft class. It makes it interesting. Some positions, age matters more than others. And look, breakout age metrics and breakout age production is something that I think does hold value. If you are able to dominate your competition level, whatever it is, as a underclassman, that's valuable because you're going up against a lot of starters who are normally upperclassmen. So if you as an 18, 19-year-old are able to hang with or even best competition that is 21, 22, 23 years old, that means a lot. It means you have a lot more production there, a lot less mileage when it comes to a physical position. But really, sometimes it matters for the trenches. Linebackers and running backs, that's the tough one, right? When you get into 23, 24 years old, it's a position that has so much demand physically, so much mileage. And we talk about, getting into your next contract, you're going to be late 20s, almost early 30s at that point with a position that is just that the lifespan is so much lower than it is for other guys. That kind of comes into play. But, quarterback, even wide receivers, I'm not really that worried about age when it comes to some of these guys, especially since this year specifically, we have seen players take advantage of that COVID year and make the most of it. Bo Nix is obviously somebody who is one who comes to mind as brilliantly getting better this past year, but there are a lot of different examples of that. And so sometimes, yes, you want the age to be a little bit lower, but if it means they're a better prospect going into the NFL, sometimes that's advantageous too.
All right, last thing. We agree, I think, right, that offensive line tackle specifically is probably the deepest position here? Yeah?
There's a lot of this year more than other years. It feels like you can get a good offensive tackle a lot later.
Is tight end the worst position in this draft?
It's got the most scarcity for sure. I mean, you got Brock Bowers at the very top, who's been an elite player. Anybody who's paid any attention to college football knows who Brock Bowers' name is. He's got the potential to go in the top 15, maybe the top 10. I think Ja'Tavion Sanders doesn't get talked about enough, the former 5-star recruit who used to be a defensive end and also played tight end. He got to Texas. Now he plays tight end full time. Crazy athlete, really fluid athlete for his size. I think he is also a top 50 caliber player. I think he could be a back end of the first, early part of the second guy. But after that, pretty big drop off. I mean, we're talking about third, Cade Stover, Ben Sinnott, Jaheim Bell, maybe as that next guy as a third rounder, but potentially fourth rounder. And so it's a huge drop off if you don't get Brock Bowers or Ja'Tavion Sanders.
Yeah, and Jaheim Bell, Florida State, formerly South Carolina, kind of an H-back guy that has, when he was at South Carolina, carried the football as well. He had, I believe, 70-plus career carries at South Carolina. He's not Deebo Samuel. I know they played the wide back there. A lot of people want to. He's not Deebo. He's a tight end who can carry the football. He's a versatile player, but again, not a day one, maybe a day two guy, regardless. Either way, PFF's big board is up. A lot of offensive linemen, and the mock draft here is fascinating with J.J. McCarthy at 10 with a trade, with the Broncos going up to 2. Got corners, got tackles, got Bo Nix getting into the first round at 30. It's fun. It is officially draft season. Go to PFF to get all Trevor Sikkema and his great team's work. Trevor, appreciate you, man. Hope to see you in Indianapolis.
Yeah, appreciate it, Andrew. I'll see you there.
You got it. Trevor Sikkema, everybody. It's draft season.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.